Hello, hello. I'm in downtown Laguna Beach, my hometown. And I'm just walking around before I'm gonna meet up with some friends. And I met up with an old friend this morning who had an NDE. He's actually coming to Egypt. He's been to Egypt with me before, but he's gonna be on our faculty in February. And I'm super excited because his story is nothing less than absolutely amazing. He died for 45 minutes about, I guess it was 8 years ago, and had the most incredible experience while he was technically and legally dead. And it was such an amazing story that I thought it needed to be told and needed to be shared with our group that's going to Egypt. Hello from Berlin. Hello, Berlin. Hello, Sweden. Hello, Soul family. Great to see everyone on here. It's a little bit chilly today in Laguna Beach. I rode my bike. You can see my cool bike here. Isn't that a beauty? I love riding this little electric bike around town here. It's pretty awesome. So if you've never been to Laguna Beach, this is my hometown. And I can see if I can show a bit of the downtown area. Isn't this such a cute little place? Such an amazing little town. And it's quite an interesting community too. I've been here for over 20 years and I absolutely love living here. It's such a special place, and there's energetic vortices here, vortices and everything that make it such a special place. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the closeout of 2024. It's been an incredible year for sure. And now we're going into 2025. I think, gosh, as I look back on the year, there's been so much that's happened. It's like beyond, I can't even process all of it, to be honest. I feel like we've definitely jumped some timelines here or something shifted, and it's been a blissful end. And so who's going to Egypt? Well, 144 people are going to Egypt in February with me. I have another Egypt trip that's coming up in May that just is getting announced. So if you're on the wait list, make sure you're on the lookout for us because it's going to end up filling up very fast. So make sure you sign up quickly if you'd like to go. And for those of you that don't know this, I'm actually going to Antarctica next week as well, which is going to be quite an expedition. I'm super excited to go there. I feel like there's going to be something big that gets discovered there. I don't know what yet, but it feels somehow related, of all things, to like pyramids in Egypt. I don't know. We'll see. We'll learn soon enough. Hello from Stockholm. Hi, Stockholm. You know what? In 2025, one of the things I'm looking forward to is I'm actually going to do a European speaking tour. And one of the places we're looking at going to is to Stockholm. So I'm very excited about that. It's been a long time since I've been to Stockholm. Such a beautiful, beautiful city. It's a lot like Venice. It's been probably 15 years since I've been there, but I absolutely love it there. And also in Boston. Hi, Angel. Good to see you there. And gosh, lots of friends here. This is great. So 2024, what happened this year? Well, a lot happened this year. In fact, so much so that I can't even process all of it because there's so much to process about it. But I definitely feel a massive shift in consciousness that's been happening this year. And I feel like everything's accelerating. I think that's also why we're seeing so many more examples and cases of UAP, sightings, etc. And of course, I'm not even talking about the drone stuff. I'm just talking about the UAP sightings. Now, people are looking up at the sky more, which is definitely true, but I see it as a shift in consciousness. I believe that all of the extraterrestrials and intraterrestrials, as I like to refer to them, have been here all along, and it's us that has to raise consciousness to be able to perceive them. And as we raise our consciousness, we'll start seeing them more and more, and we'll realize that they've been here all along. It's just another form of pattern recognition. Love the stash. Funny. I can't believe how much stuff I've gotten on the mustache thing. It's hilarious how many people think somehow I'm under the mind control of Matthias Di Stefano. We laugh about this. I sent him pictures of all the comments that said, "Oh yeah, you're being mind controlled by Matthias." That couldn't be more ridiculously funny. But we do laugh about it. But it's just fine. All is good. This year, I think I had such an amazing year on so many levels. Gosh, I went all around the world. I think I went to like 26 or something countries, like a huge number, and got to meet people all around the world, and definitely went through a transformation. I think more this year than I ever have any other year. Gosh, yeah. I mean, the fasting and everything that came along with that, you know, the channeling of things like 24 precepts of universal, you know, of universal mind, as well as the paper I recently wrote on a novel theory of everything. These are all things that kind of came in, and moments of clarity that I think have had a big impact on how I perceive the world. And what I've come to the realization is that the whole purpose of life is really just to learn how to love and how to be loved. And really the aspect of that becomes most critical is being absolutely authentic. Because when we learn our own dark aspects, we understand who we are, that's when things really start to accelerate for us from a spirituality perspective, because then we can be absolutely authentic. And I think we're born with this feeling that something is missing. We're born with this feeling like, you know, maybe I'm not good enough somehow, some way. And so we look for these aspects of ourselves that we want to augment so that we can be more accepted in society, so we can be more, you know, fit in, I guess, with the other folks that we're basically here in this journey with. And actually the whole purpose of life is just to realize that you were perfect already. That worthiness is not about accomplishing something more. Worthiness is just remembering your birthright and your own divinity within you. And it was there all along. And I think that's the thing, you know, you spend your whole life searching outside of you only to realize that the entire search that you had outside of you was really just a reflection of what's happening inside of you. And it's such a beautiful path when you come to this realization that everything is meant to just be accepted and fallen in love with. It's not that we improve the world by making changes to the world around us. And the same thing is true with us. We don't improve ourselves by making changes to ourselves. It's by learning to fall in love with ourselves as we are, that actually all the best changes then happen naturally. It's the unconditional love that leads us to start to see ourselves in a new way, and then we start acting then that's consistent in a way with loving ourselves. And worthiness is just part of the birthright that you're born with. It has nothing to do with necessarily what you've accomplished or what you do. It's just learning to be at one and at peace with the experience that you've chosen. And I think that's probably the biggest revelation I've had this year, is that, you know, I am good enough just as I am. I don't need to accomplish more. I don't need to do more to prove to myself or anyone else that I am worthy. I'm divine just as all of you are. We all are. And when we understand this, then the unconditional love becomes really meaningful, because if we've done this in the context of understanding as well our darkness and becoming aware of the dark aspects of how we might be able to be perceived, that is when you actually can achieve true authenticity. And I think the line between New Earth and Old Earth is literally going to be the authenticity line. The people that are able to unabashedly, unashamedly live their lives the way that they uniquely are meant to be, learning how to love and just be loved, and recognizing that the one divides itself in the many so that it can simply fall in love with itself more through our eyes of perception. This is when we start to really ascend and when we start to experience life in new ways. I think that's the profound aspect of it, that we don't need to continue to suffer when we start to understand that all the suffering that we had a purpose. That the suffering, much like judgment, you know, judgment is the source of all suffering, but suffering is the source of enlightenment. And when we come to that realization, wow, it has such a massive impact on everything in our lives, because the context of everything shifts. That contextual shift becomes the most powerful thing. So as I go into 2025, I think that's the greatest learning that I had for the year, learning to be my authentic self and not caring what other people think, and not judging myself negatively in any way anymore. Just recognizing that I can be at peace with who I am and where I am in my life. At this age, I'm 55, and I haven't felt better. I literally feel like I'm in the best physical shape of my life, probably, at this point in time. I feel great, and I feel, most importantly, accepting of where I am, and I've accomplished enough. I've done enough. I think this is an age, if 2024 was the end of human doing, I think 2025 is going to be the beginning of truly human being. I think we've all been in this mode of human doingness. And it reminds me of the word apis. So apis is the word in Egyptian that is referencing the apis bull, which is the Osiris representation. But also in Greek, the word apis is a reference to bees. And so this word having two meanings in two different languages that are pretty closely linked to each other throughout history had kind of a big impact on me, because I realized that the symbol of the bull, and I'm a Taurus, has been that of human doing for a long time. Doing. When actually, the bee is about being. So there it was all along. And actually, if you look at the astrology of this as well, you've got the Apis bull, which is in Taurus, and then the Corona Borealis, which is the beehive, or the crown, the beehive crown, which is right on top of Ophiuchus, which is directly across from the Apis bull, which is Osiris, which is part of Taurus constellation. It's one of the three. Eridanus, Auriga, and Orion are the three constellations within the degrees of Taurus in the sky. So exactly opposite is where Ophiuchus gets a crown. So think of it as the shadow, Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiac, and the 14th zodiac being Orion. So this is when the shadow of Orion finally gets the crown of the Corona Borealis, which is also expected this year to go supernova, sometime in the not too distant future. And so what does this mean? This beehive, I think it's really a reference when we end up going through a crown chakra activation. That's when we start to recognize that it's no longer about human doing, and now it's about human beingness. That the things that we accomplish are nice and they're part of the path that we chose, and there's nothing wrong with those things that we wanted to accomplish. But that's not the main purpose of this existence. The main purpose of this existence, again, is really just to love and be loved, and to find our authentic self. That is the true hero's journey. And this transition to human beingness is the most beautiful thing ever. It really is. And it means that we don't have to suffer so much anymore, because we've kind of finally got to the stage where we've accepted the suffering. Once you've accepted suffering for its true purpose, then you don't need to suffer so much anymore. We learn here through opposites. So whatever you're experiencing, find the opposite of that thing, and realize that the reason why you're going through the challenge that you are is A, you chose it in some way, shape, or form, not in your capacity as a human being and an avatar body here on Earth, but in your capacity as a higher self. You chose the path. The question is not why did this happen to me, but why did I choose what I experienced? What's the reason for it? This morning, I watched a podcast that I did recently with Stephanie Postles, who is in Austin, Texas. And I did this podcast in early November. And while I was doing the podcast, I recognized something that I'd forgotten about entirely. That during the podcast, I was looking at her bookshelf, and I noticed that she had a book on her shelf that was titled the Odyssey, right? So Homer's Odyssey, like Homer's Iliad. And it's the story of Odysseus, and who comes back from the Trojan War and ends up, getting lost on the way home, and he can't get back to his home and to his wife and family. And he has many adventures along the way. And I remember as a child reading this and loving the story. I was always fascinated by it. So I noticed the bookshelf on her bookshelf. I noticed the book on her bookshelf, and I said something about it during the podcast. I said, "Oh wow, you've got the Odyssey over there. That's pretty cool." And I didn't even connect the dots that literally about a week later, I went to Ibiza. And right when I landed in Ibiza, I meet this guy who had been on the plane, and I was on the bus going to the terminal, And I was thinking, oh, I need to go visit Es Vedra. Es Vedra is this island that, several of my friends told me, you got to go visit this place. And I didn't really know the legend or history behind it or anything, but I thought, I got to go to Es Vedra. So I need to charter a boat, and especially it was during off season, so it's difficult to charter a boat in Ibiza this time of year. And so I get on this bus, and immediately the guy standing next to me on the bus, who's holding on to the rail thing just like I was, says, Robert Grant. He goes, oh, I'm one of your followers. I'm a huge fan of your work, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, wow, that's nice. And then the guy next to him says, I am too. And I'm a boat captain, and I'd like to take you to Es Vedra on my boat. And I'd just been thinking I got to charter a boat. So he says, oh, I have, this boat of some wealthy guy that I take care of, and it's off season, so I'm not doing anything with it. I'd like to take it for, a day. We'll go out with you. And so he said, you could invite whoever you want. Well, I didn't really have any friends in Ibiza. It was my first time there. And so I was like, wow, that's a nice little, synchronicity. How beautiful is that? How cool. I get to go to Es Vedra this week. Well, then I did a post on IG Live when I was in Ibiza, and all of a sudden I have like 150 invitations from people that want to do stuff with me on the island. And the first, 15 or so that had written out and invited, I invited to come on this boat. So here we go on this boat. Now, I didn't realize that this Es Vedra island was the island in the Odyssey. The story of the Odyssey. That's the most prominent story probably that I always remembered, which is the story of Odysseus who ties himself to the mast of his ship. And he tells his men, they all have beeswax. There's the bee showing up again. They all have beeswax in their ears. He says, don't listen to me, whatever I say, because I'm going to go by this island. I'm going to listen to the sirens, who are these mermaid figures who lure men, seamen, to jump into the water around Es Vedra to swim to the island. Now, this island is super magnetic. It's like super magnetized. And for those of you that have been to Ibiza, you'll know what I'm talking about. Even all the compasses by it's like Bermuda Triangle. All the compasses end up spinning in circles. They just go nuts there. And so the legend, even at the time of Odysseus, was that sailors would jump in the water and they would get so dizzy swimming towards the island to try to touch the island that they would plunge to their depths and die. Why? Well, because they'd get vertigo from all the magnetism of the island. And so next thing I know, I find myself here in this place that's literally a key story in the Odyssey. And of course we drop anchor, which is pretty far away from, you have to swim quite a ways to get to the island, to touch the island. And it's not an easy swim because there are heavy currents and the water's very cold. And I'm not exactly what I would consider an expert swimmer. I'm a decent swimmer, but I'm not an expert swimmer. I've never been a competitive swimmer. Running was more my thing. And so, a few of the people on the boat decided to jump in the water and make the swim. And it's much farther than you think. And the reason is because the boat has to drop anchor somewhere, far away a bit from the island so that it doesn't crash into the rocks that are underneath. They're pretty shallow around the island. There's very steep cliffs that just go up hundreds of feet off of this island. And the island is etched. As you swim close to it, you can start to see that it's etched all over. The cliffside faces are etched with scorpions and skulls. Like it's a place of death. And so I don't know what it was, but one of the people that was on the trip, her name is Eve, decides to jump in, and she dives in the water, and she's kind of like a super expert swimmer. And so I thought, well, if she could do it, then I'll do it too. And then a few of us did. I get about halfway across the water, and I get vertigo. So this is like a dizziness, and when you're swimming, it's not a very good feeling to get dizzy when you're swimming. And then I got cramps in both my legs, so the water was quite cold. And next thing I know, Eve comes up to me and says, hey, are you okay? Because she's a super expert swimmer, and she helps me get to the island. And of course, we looked at the island. We tried to climb up into the island, but it was hard because, we're barefoot, and the island was so spiky. It would literally cut your feet if you tried to walk on it. I mean, it was very, very spiky. So while I'm swimming across, though, getting vertigo, I'm thinking, was this a smart thing to do? I'm looking back because I'm kind of off course because of the vertigo. And I'm thinking, gosh, this was not very smart. Here I am, in deep water with currents, cold with cramps, and dizzy, and trying to swim to this island so I could touch this island because it's a thing that you should do. But of course, the legend is that lots of people try that and die. And of course, I get saved by a mermaid. I never even thought about the implication of this as being tied to the story of the Odyssey until this morning. I mean, I knew at the time because it was like, okay, the story of the Odyssey, but I'd forgotten even that I noticed this book on the shelf at Stephanie Postel's office in her studio of the Odyssey. But then I start to question myself, okay, we live in an emergent dream. And this emergent dream is literally created moment by moment by our conscious and our subconscious mind. Was the whole reason that I ended up experiencing, I've traveled all over the world. I've never been to a place that was prominent in a story like in the Odyssey. And now I find myself in a place within a week and a half of actually noticing the book, The Odyssey, on the shelf. And I didn't realize and make that connection until this morning. How much of our lives are actually just representations of our U-inverse, of these projections and connections that we make between our conscious and subconscious mind? Are we living literally in an inception dream? And in our dreams, I could be walking down the street and the street would be bound by gravity and I would have light. But actually, my eyes are closed in my dream. Why is there gravity? And why is there even light? And if I decided in my dream to try to analyze it, because I'm in a long-term version of this dream, and I wanted to analyze, what's a photon? What's an electron? What is gravitational pull? All these things, I start to realize, wait a minute, what we think of as a shared reality maybe doesn't exist at all because everything is mental and everything is non-objective and entirely subjective. That this experience is entirely subjective. And as such, we are having this unique experience in our own U-inverse. And then you start realizing that all the relationships and all the people you meet and all the circumstances you come into and encounter are actually projections of what's happening in your own subconscious mind. That all of it is connected and there to happen for you, not to you. And until you finally realize that everything is happening for you and not to you, then it can seem pretty hellish at times. Because just like learning math without meaning is just learning information, spirituality and experiencing suffering without the meaning behind the suffering, that it is the doorway to enlightenment, is just suffering until you realize that it's there for a reason. And to me, this is when we start to transit into the age of human being instead of human doing. Realizing that our minds actually have a lot more control over our experience than anything we could ever have imagined. And the transformation within us then becomes possible. Because just like a dragonfly who doesn't realize that its destiny is to fly, while it's underwater, like this little larvae, it doesn't realize that one day it's going to go through a molting process that it's going to think is death. And then it ends up flying above, like an angel looking down at his old friends. Becoming a dragonfly with silicon wings. That just represent a higher order of experience. The next expansion of human consciousness. When the Apis bull turns into the Apis bee. And that's the transit that we make between doing and being. I think that's what 2025 is going to be about. For those people that want to experience more and more duality, they'll experience more duality. I believe the Earth and the experience here is already split. The great split's already happened. We're now in different timelines. And everything's starting to seem like Mandela effects. I can tell you it feels pretty surreal to me when I end up going to the Giza Plateau and I meet with the leadership of the Giza Plateau, and I tell them, oh, I found some maps, and these maps basically show 4 and 5 pyramids on the Giza Plateau, and I think I know, based on satellite photography, where the other 2 pyramids are. That seems pretty surreal. And then they let me go and analyze it. Within 5 minutes, we find them. I think that is also showing us and portending something as to the age of the suffering without meaning is over. And a lot of the doing that we've been doing is related to this suffering without understanding the meaning behind the suffering. And now that we can understand the meaning behind the suffering and contextualize it, that it's just all our path to divinity and remembering who we are, then we can start to realize the Homo Sanctus Luminous, the representation of our own God realization for each and every one of us. If you think that the world is beautiful and divine, and you're the only part of it that's not, then that's egoic. We are all beautiful and perfect just as we are. And the moment we can actually see ourselves in that light is when your world will shift. You know, next week I'm going to the end of the world. Literally the end of the world. I'm going down to Ushuaia. And it's funny because my friend Matthias, we were in this group chat and he wrote something like, oh, I have to be in Ushuaia on January 4th for a reason. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to be in Ushuaia, which is literally in Tierra del Fuego, the very bottom tip, the bottom of the boot of Argentina. And I wrote back and I said, wait, you're going to Ushuaia on the 4th of January? I'm going to be there on the 4th of January. And I'm going to be there also with my, ex-girlfriend Jade, who's actually going also to Antarctica. And Matthias and Jade and I are all good friends. And I'm like, so wait, we'll end up meeting there then. How crazy is that? There are no coincidences, like none whatsoever. And I believe that the reason why we're going to the end of the world is because it's literally the end of the world of human doing. And now we're going into new earth, and this is representative. Everything is metaphorical. Everything that happens in your life is a metaphor. When you realize that it's all emergent of mind, then you realize that everything that shows up in your life has a meaning. So start to decipher the meaning, because it's all there. Every relationship is a mirror that is trying to show you some aspect of yourself that you don't accept. And every time we judge something in someone else, rather than saying, hey, this person's bothering me because of this, it's like the person who says, I'm surrounded by assholes all the time, because they're the freaking asshole. If I feel like I'm in a world surrounded by assholes, then I'm the asshole. This is the realization. Nothing is separate from us. Everything is part of us. And it leads to such a beautiful existence. And I hope that you guys can take this message with you today. Somehow, from this message, you can find your own divinity, that you can find your own raison d'etre, your reason for being. And when you do, your world's going to shift. So I can see a bunch of people commenting on here. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. I've got a little time. Wonderful, you will go to the end of the world. It will be amazing it's just everything there. By the way, I think there's going to be several more pyramids that get discovered. I had a call with the CEO of Gaia the other day, and I told him that I think there's going to be a lot of new pyramid discovery coming up. I think the pyramids are all literally like keys on a gigantic piano keyboard, like a music box. Each one has its own resonance frequency, and it's determined exactly by the slope angle of each of the pyramids. I'm going to be going soon also to Mexico. I found on satellite photography another pyramid. And It's easier to see through satellite photography than it is probably on the ground. So I think that a lot of these things are going to be coming up literally all over the world. As we find the music within ourselves, the music outside of us is going to show up. The world is not material. It's funny, if you haven't seen it yet, there's a great thing on physics that just came out. It's like a panel discussion, and there's like a experimental metaphysicist is one of the guys. I'm like, an experimental metaphysicist. That tells you the world is shifting right there. Metaphysics is not supposed to be something that you can experiment. But they've been working on quantum entanglement, and the title of this thing on YouTube is this the end of physics as we know it, right? Or is this the death of physics? I actually think it is. I think with the advent of quantum entanglement and the advent of what we now understand, that the fundamental basis of physics is that there's a shared reality, and I don't believe there is a shared reality now. In a way, we could call it almost like an omni-solipsism in your own U-inverse. You have the power to change the world around you. This earth can either be a heaven or hell. It has been all along. It depends on how you perceive it. And basically learning to accept and love the world is not simply condoning violence or accepting these aspects that, should be condemned. But I can tell you right now, I spent a lifetime fighting against trying to improve certain aspects of the world, to change this and that, and I can tell you, it doesn't work. The only thing that's happened as a result of that is I've created more division. I've created more of the thing I was fighting against. If I wanted to fight against deforestation, and I set up a non-profit organization to fight deforestation, the only thing I do is I end up living in a world full of deforestation, and increasingly so. We can't take things out of our personality because we look in the mirror and we say, oh, I don't like the way my hips look, or I don't like the way my body, images in this way or shape or form. All that happens is that thing that you try to remove from your personality, from yourself, the thing that you say, I am not that, ends up showing up in the world around you. And the reason why the name of God itself, and I consider God being like the heavenly one or the universal one, neither male nor female. The name of that is I am that I am. It's everything that you perceive around you that's separate. It is what you are. We spend our whole life trying to find that missing aspect of ourselves so that we could fit in, and we call that I am not that. What an interesting dichotomy it is, and paradox, that when we finally come full circle, we realize I am all of it. None of it is separate from me. All the things that I thought I was pushing out of me to deflect from me and not claim identification with are actually the things that are me, that are just unhealed, unintegrated aspects of myself that are hoping to be recognized and received back. If you're interested in learning more about this, go on my website, robertedwardgrant.com, and go to the About section, and there's a thing that says Theories, and read the 2 papers on there. One is called A Novel Theory of Everything, and the other one is called The 24 Precepts of Universal Mind. And I hope somehow these thoughts are helpful to you. I think that if we can go into 2025 and learn to love and accept the world around us and all the people in it, then we're really learning to love and accept ourselves, and that allows us, that love and acceptance of ourselves, once it hits a critical mass, is when you can absolutely feel totally comfortable being absolutely authentic. Each of us' purpose here is to perceive the one through our unique eyes of perception and live that authentically. The uniqueness is the beauty, and it should be embraced. Sending all of you love. Let's see if we got some questions here. Love and authenticity are the highest frequencies. Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity and authentic love is the highest frequency. And you can't have authentic love unless you know your own dark aspects and learn to accept those things. That's the point. You can't have authentic love without recognizing what the dark aspects are that you shouldn't, that you would normally think you wouldn't. It's only by learning those dark aspects. Because otherwise, we're just like love and light, love and light. And people all kind of go in the love and light mode, and they say, oh no, it's all about unconditional love, but they still love themselves conditionally. It's time to learn to love ourselves unconditionally and accept ourselves in our total authenticity. So let's see here. I'm planning on my first trip to Egypt. How many days should I go? Well, I think for your first trip to Egypt, if you're going on a first trip to Egypt, I would go for at least a week. It's a lot to integrate for people. So, sometimes to go longer than that, I would think about going to Egypt as being kind of a lifetime journey in a way. It's not something that you do in one trip, but you get introduced in one trip. So you want to make sure you have a really good experience on your first trip. It's like people that take mushrooms, I hear some examples of people that do like psilocybin, and their first example of it was like, oh yeah, I took 8 grams of psilocybin. I was like, what? You kidding me? That would be a horrible, horrible experience. And so people think they got to get it all in. It's like going to Egypt and trying to do your first trip in like a month or something. I think you might have a bad trip and not want to go back. If you're interested in doing mushrooms, I think can have a massive expansion on your consciousness and cause you to love yourself more and the people around you as a result. But do a very, very small amount, like very small. My goal for people, if they're doing it for the very first time, would be to give them so little that they're like, hey, I don't even feel it yet. And then you say, okay, next time we do it, then you can try a little bit more. It's keep it really, really low, and then you're going to have a great experience. So the same thing I would say for Egypt. Your first week in Egypt is going to be profound, and believe me, it will lend itself to massive shifts in your life and changes. You're going to want to go back again. So this is not a one and done. You're going to want to go several times. I don't know anyone who's come on my trips that didn't want to go back to Egypt or hasn't already gone back to Egypt. And now many of the people that come on my trips end up starting to host their own trips. And there's so many people that want to go to Egypt and explore their own initiatic path that there's no way I could take everybody. I mean, like literally, I have a wait list that's ridiculously long. There's no way I could take everybody, and I would love to be able to, but I simply cannot. So, I really recommend, giving yourself a microdose of Egypt, a real microdose, and, allowing your mind to expand and grow and make sure you kind of take it with a proper pace. I've seen people, lose it. I heard the case of someone just yesterday who, became a ayahuasca shaman and ended up getting psychosis from becoming an ayahuasca shaman. Spent 4 years doing ayahuasca over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, had a psychotic break and started doing highly, highly destructive stuff. These are very, very, very rare cases. But I think that people that go too deep and too heavy too quickly, they cut themselves, they kind of put themselves on a difficult, more challenging path than is necessary. Let it sort of come to you. Learn the surrender with some time. And that's going to have the best impact on your life and on you. May have the pyramids where you live. Where are you living? Because you may have pyramids where I live. I live in Laguna Beach, California. But there are pyramids all over the place. And I do believe there are pyramids here too. In fact, I've been asked, it's on my list of places to go to the Four Corners at Monument Valley. Apparently there's a Sphinx there, and I got to download that the entire Monument Valley was not a natural formation in total. That at one point in time, what we think of as a lot of these big monoliths were actually like gigantic, installations that were carved. And I don't know how factual that is, but I could tell you that there are pyramids there as well, and there's Orion formations. I do know that. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. That's just only so much time in the day to be able to do that. Come to the Amazon, Robert. Yes, I've been to the Amazon. I love to go back again. I spent a week in Maun once, and that was a really amazing experience where the river Negra and the Roja meet together. They merge. And the flora and fauna there were amazing. And I tell you what, one of my friends fell out of the boat in piranha-infested water while we were fishing for piranha, and you use little steak cubes. And I've never seen someone run on top of the water as fast as he did. It was the most incredible experience. Okay, so let's see. You save this life. Yes, this life will be saved. I save all my lives. They always get posted. So many synchronicities right now. Yeah, really looking forward to. I don't know what's coming. I was amazed to see Veda Austin put out a post yesterday about how the water that she was getting from Antarctica was showing up with all kinds of designs and such, of Egyptian iconography. As she was freezing it, flash freezing it, and those images of the flash frozen water were showing up like that. So it's kind of telling you that they had some history, because water has memory. So I keep feeling that there's something more related to this that we're going to learn in Antarctica. And of course, I have a feeling very strongly that there's pyramids there too. Okay, so let's see. Are you coming to Switzerland? In fact, I am next year planning on being one of the co-hosts of a festival with Christina Bazan. And she's hosting a new festival that's going to be announced shortly called Mystic. And it's going to be the first, I'm going to say around the 7th, 8th, 9th, I think, 10th of August. And it's going to be in Switzerland. So be on the lookout for that. That's been coming together. This year I've gotten invited to speak at many different conferences. I think I'll probably be at Lightning in a Bottle as well. So not only conferences, but also festivals. That's also seeming to merge a lot more. Will you show us Antarctica? Yes, I will show you Antarctica. Wherever I've got like cell phone coverage, I'll do some lives and stuff from Antarctica. And Matthias and I will do some lives and stuff, which will be cool. How am I feeling? How old are you feeling right now? You look younger. I feel the same as I did when I was in my 30s, to be honest. I feel as good as I did in my 30s. And I'd say in my 30s, I felt better than I did when I was in my 20s. So I feel as good as I've ever felt. I have a lot of energy. I don't usually sleep very much at night. I only sleep usually like 4 hours a night, but I slept 8 hours last night, which is really rare for me. Plenty of life. Yeah, I still have plenty of life in me, that's for sure. Find the UFO stuck on the ice. Okay, I'll look for the UFO stuck on the ice. Starlink works in Antarctica. It does. Yes, Starlink does work in Antarctica, and we will have access to internet and stuff there at some of the places, but I'm not expecting we'll have it everywhere. I have Starlink at home. I love that thing. I take it with me, so I'll probably be taking it with me as well on this trip. I'm 53 but feel like 33. Exactly. I think age is really what you believe it to be. It's the fasting, which is really powerful, as well as you could say also that the denial of the self as we go throughout life is what causes us in large part to age, I believe. It's the judgments of the world around you. And as soon as you learn to accept the self, then you start to experience reverse aging when you combine that with fasting as well. And digestion is kind of the same thing in a way. You're like processing by eating, you're processing this aspect that creates all of this waste, right? That in a way is just like, imagine if you could accumulate all of your waste. That'd be like the universe expansion, right? In a way where you're going to have like time space expanding, right? And so as we no longer have to eat as much as we did at one point in time in our lives. And, I think that the metaphor, when you're living in a mind matrix, then everything has a metaphorical meaning, literally everything. So, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, when God said, hey, don't eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that the dayest thou doest thereof, thou doest that, thou shalt surely die, right? It's the beginning of death, is when you start to eat. And it's fascinating because, it's the knowledge of good and evil that then leads us to have this judgment, but actually the knowledge of good and evil is only one aspect of it. The knowledge of good and evil in the context of what will benefit you. This is where we have the introduction of shame. God's looking for Adam. He says, where are you? I was like, oh, I was ashamed. Why are you ashamed? Because I was naked. Well, who told you you're naked? And the first thing we want to do when we feel shame is to blame someone else. And so he immediately blames his wife. This blame and this game of judgment is a necessary part of the matrix. Judgment is the source of suffering, but suffering is the source of enlightenment. Recognizing that suffering with a purpose and a meaning behind it is there to teach us, because we're suffering through experiencing opposites of what we want. Everything that we want, we experience the opposite of. It's the nature of it. So let go of the things that you want and learn to accept the negative aspect of it. And once you accept it, then you no longer have to learn through the suffering of that thing. It's actually pretty simple, but it's super counterintuitive. And it took me a long time to learn this. And we will attract everything we judge until we no longer judge what we attracted. Are you planning on hosting a retreat or several days of knowledge seminar? Yes, I'm going to host a retreat in Ibiza in June. And so stay tuned for that. I'm doing this European tour. So it's going to be London first, and then Paris, and possibly Stockholm, then Lisbon, and that's the current plan, and then finishing up with Ibiza. And that'll be like a 2-day seminar type of a thing that will be about a lot of this type of, these types of subjects. What is the difference between your me and our me? Well, I've always thought that there's some interesting connection between the word me and we. And of course, you might say, well, wait a minute, that only works in English, that you just flip the M upside down and becomes we to W. But it's a U inverse. So literally everything, all the gematria, everything has meaning. Even like the words apis, which is in the Egyptian language, the bull. And apis in the Greek language is the bees, right? It definitely has a meaning. And so this idea that what we separate out and say, that is not me, this world around me, once you finally realize they're all just projections of you, and how you perceive them is tied entirely. You can't separate out your conditioning bias from how your experience of that is. Your conditioning bias is determining what it is that you're experiencing. So you can't separate it. So it's entirely subjective, and it's entirely only you. Each one of us has this experience. We're all divisions of the number one. We're all divisions of Source Creator. And no one of us is any better than anyone else. Not a single one of us is any better than anyone else. Again, I'm not afraid of people that have darkness, because everyone has darkness, but in equal amounts. It's just some people don't know that they have darkness. I'm only afraid of the people that believe they have no darkness. Once you realize that you have darkness, that's when you can learn to start accepting it and start realizing, instead of asking this question, is like, why did something happen to me and I'm a victim this or I'm a victim that, which only creates more victimhood. I'm not trying to tell people when they say that they're victims that, it's bad to go to this way of thinking. I'm just trying to break them out of the loop of it and realize and raise consciousness that anything you judge is going to be the thing that you continue to experience. This is the theme. That's the way life is. If you spot it in someone else, that means you got it. So the moment you want to judge someone or something, just maybe take a moment and be conscious about it. Why am I feeling triggered by this? We learn through the triggers. I did a post the other day which said, your experience of abandonment is teaching you how to stand on your own 2 feet. This is true with everything. Whatever you're experiencing, learn how to accept it. The sooner you learn how to accept it in love, the sooner you'll learn how to transcend it. If you have a fear of heights, then go to increasingly difficult, higher and higher heights. Experience that and learn to transcend it by accepting the fear of heights that you have. That's how we transcend. We don't transcend it by avoiding it or fighting it. We transcend it by learning to accept it. I want to thank everyone for a wonderful year. I really am so appreciative of the whole, Instagram community and the soul family around this. I'm super grateful. And I've learned so much this year. And I just want to extend my love to every one of you. I'm not in Ibiza right now. I'm in Laguna Beach, California right now. But I want to extend my love to each and every one of you and wish you all a wonderful close to 2024. It has been a magical year for sure. And I think 2025 is going to be even more magical if we but let it be. And let this be the year of human being over human doing. Love to all of you. Have a wonderful day. And I wish all of you a happy new year. We'll see you soon. Bye. Close this up. And what I do here is I forgot I didn't record this, so I'm going to record this so I can see all the comments and go back and read any questions. And I try to address those in the next post and such that I do. So there's quite a few on here, so I'm going to kind of scroll through all these so I can capture them all. Lots of comments about my mustache. So funny. Okay. Wow, so many comments on here. Wow. Happy New Year, everyone. Have a wonderful time with your families, your friends. Learn to fall in love with your friends and family even more. We're here for these relationships. Gosh, I'm still not even through all the comments yet. I'm looking through them. Okay, I think that's good enough. Have a wonderful day, everyone.